Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
The fluorescent lights of the lawyer's office hummed like angry wasps as Riley Wilson stared at the papers before her. Divorce decree, final settlement, the end of 5 years of marriage to Francis, reduced to legal jargon and property divisions. Her hands trembled as she signed her name, each letter feeling like she was carving her own epitaph. Francis had cheated. Not once, but repeatedly, with women whose names Riley had forced herself to forget. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound, leaving scars on her soul that she feared might never heal. As she walked out of that sterile office building, the August heat hitting her face like a slap, Riley made herself a promise. Never again would she be vulnerable to such pain. But you see, dear listener, the heart is a peculiar organ. It has its own wisdom, its own timing, and it rarely consults with our carefully constructed plans. Riley had always found refuge on the racetrack. The roar of engines, the smell of burning. Rubber, the split-second decisions that meant the difference between victory and disaster. This was where she felt most alive, most herself. Racing demanded everything from her: skill, courage, and an almost spiritual connection between driver and machine. Her car was a modified 1967 Camaro SS, painted midnight blue with silver racing stripes. She'd named her Tempest, and together they had conquered tracks across 3 states. But after the divorce, even Tempest seemed to sense her driver's emotional turmoil. The car that had once responded to Riley's every thought now felt sluggish, unresponsive. "You need a new mechanic," her racing team owner, Big Jim Morrison, had said one sweltering afternoon at Riverside Speedway. Jim was a mountain of a man with hands like ham hocks and a heart bigger than Texas. He'd taken Riley under his wing when she was just 19, fresh out of high school with nothing but raw talent and burning determination. "I can handle my own maintenance," Riley replied, wiping grease from her hands with a rag that had seen better decades. Jim chuckled, the sound like distant thunder. "Honey, you're a hell of a driver, but you're about as good with an engine as I am at ballet. Besides, I already hired someone. Best damn mechanic I've seen in 30 years. Riley's jaw tightened. "Please tell me it's not another one of your nephew's friends who thinks carburetors are still cutting-edge technology." "Actually," Jim said, his eyes twinkling with mischief, "her name is Abigail Evans, and she just finished her mechanical engineering degree at Georgia Tech." The word hung in the air like smoke from burning oil. Riley had worked with female mechanics before, and the experience had always been complicated. Either they were trying too hard to prove themselves in a male-dominated field, overcompensating with attitude and aggression, or they were looking for romantic complications that Riley had no patience for. "Jim, you know how I feel about letting your prejudices cost you races?" Jim interrupted, his tone growing serious. "Riley, you've lost 3 of your last 5 races. Tempest is running like she's pulling a trailer full of cement. You need help, and Abigail is the best help money can buy." Riley wanted to argue, but the numbers didn't lie. Her performance had been declining steadily since the divorce proceedings began. If she wanted to qualify for the regional championships, she needed to get her act together. "Fine," she said finally. "But if this turns into some kind of drama, I'm holding you personally responsible." Jim grinned. "Fair enough." "She starts tomorrow morning, asterisk." The next morning arrived with the promise of another scorching Georgia day. Riley arrived at the garage early, hoping to get some work done before her new mechanic showed up. She wanted to establish from the beginning that this was her domain, her rules. She was elbow deep in Tempest's engine compartment, cursing at a stubborn bolt, when she heard the garage door open. Footsteps approached, measured, confident. "You're stripping the threads on that bolt?" Riley froze. The voice was warm, melodious, with just a hint of amusement. She extracted herself from the engine bay and turned around, and her breath caught in her throat. Abigail Evans was nothing like what Riley had expected. She was tall and lean, with auburn hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and eyes the color of sage honey. Her coveralls were clean but clearly well used, and she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. "Excuse me," Riley said, her defensive instincts kicking in. Abigail approached Tempest, running her hand along the car's flank like she was greeting an old friend. "This bolt here," she said, pointing to where Riley had been working. "You're applying force at the wrong angle. Keep going like that, and you'll need to retap the entire assembly. Riley bristled. I've been working on cars since I was 12 years old. I'm sure you have, Abigail said, her tone remaining neutral. But there's a difference between working on cars and understanding them. May I? Something in her manner, respectful but assured, made Riley step aside. Abigail selected a different wrench from her own toolkit and, with a few precise movements, removed the bolt that had been giving Riley trouble for 20 minutes. It's not about force, Abigail explained, holding up the bolt to examine its threads. It's about patience, understanding the metal's properties, working with the engineering rather than against it. Riley watched, grudgingly impressed, as Abigail began a systematic examination of Tempest's engine. Her movements were economical, precise, almost choreographed. She didn't just look at the components. She listened to them, felt them, seemed to commune with them on some deeper level. Your timing is off by about 3 degrees, Abigail said after several minutes. And your air-fuel mixture is running too rich. That's why she feels sluggish in the higher RPMs. I know that, Riley lied. Abigail glanced up, those honey-colored eyes seeming to see right through her. Do you? Because based on the adjustments, I can see here you've been trying to compensate with boost pressure instead of addressing the root cause. Heat rose in Riley's cheeks. This woman had been here for 15 minutes and had already identified problems that had been plaguing Riley for weeks. Look, Riley said, crossing her arms. I don't know what Big Jen told you, but I'm not looking for a partner. I'm looking for someone who can follow instructions and stay out of my way. For the first time, something flickered in Abigail's eyes. Not anger exactly, but a kind of weary recognition. I've heard this speech before, she said quietly. Usually right before the driver realizes that their ego is costing them races. The comment hit home harder than Riley cared to admit. She was about to deliver a sharp retort when Abigail continued. Tell you what, give me 3 hours with your car. If I can't improve her performance, I'll pack up my tools and you'll gawk up. Never see me again. If I can, then maybe we can find a way to work together without either of us compromising our principles. Riley studied the other woman's face, looking for signs of arrogance or challenge. Instead, she found something unexpected, understanding. As if Abigail knew exactly what it felt like to have your competence questioned, your place in this world challenged. 3 hours, Riley agreed. But I'm watching everything you do. What followed was unlike anything Riley had ever witnessed. Abigail didn't just work on Tempest. She conducted a symphony with wrenches and diagnostic equipment. Every adjustment was deliberate, every calibration precise. She explained each step, not with condescension, but with the patient clarity of someone who genuinely loved sharing knowledge. Engines are like people, Abigail said as she adjusted the carburetor settings. They have personalities, moods, preferences. This one, she patted Tempest's intake manifold. She's proud. Strong, but she's been hurt recently, and she's not trusting her driver the way she used to. Riley felt an uncomfortable tightness in her chest. Cars don't have feelings, don't they? Abigail looked up, a small smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Then why do drivers name them? Why do you call her Tempest instead of the car or vehicle number 47? Riley didn't have a good answer for that. As the morning wore on, Riley found herself drawn into Abigail's orbit. The woman had an almost magnetic presence, not flashy or attention-seeking, but quietly compelling. She moved with grace and purpose, her knowledge of automotive systems encyclopedic yet never showy. You studied at Georgia Tech? Riley asked during a break, handing Abigail a bottle of water. Mechanical engineering with a focus on high performance. Systems, Abigail confirmed. But I've been working on cars since I was 8. My grandfather owned a garage in Valdosta. He taught me that every machine has a soul, and if you want it to perform, you have to respect that soul. Sounds like your grandfather was quite a philosopher. Abigail's expression grew distant. He died last year. Left me his tools. And his wisdom about treating machines like living things. There was pain in those words, carefully controlled, but unmistakably real. Riley recognized it because she carried the same kind of carefully controlled pain. By noon, the transformation was complete. Riley turned Tempest's key, and the engine came alive with a purr that was both powerful and refined. The idle was smooth, the throttle response crisp and immediate. Take her for a test drive, Abigail suggested, wiping her hands on a shop rag. Riley didn't need to be asked twice. She backed Tempest out of the garage and onto the practice track behind the facility. As soon as she pressed the accelerator, she knew something fundamental had changed. The car responded to her inputs like it was reading her mind. Every gear. Change was butter smooth, every turn perfectly balanced. She pushed harder, taking the corners at speeds that would have been reckless that morning, but now felt completely natural. Tempest wasn't just running better. She was running like she was meant to run, like she was finally free to express her true nature. When Riley pulled back into the garage, she was grinning like a teenager who had just gotten her first kiss. Abigail was cleaning her tools, but she looked up as Riley climbed out of the car. "Well?" Abigail asked. Riley struggled for words. "I don't know what you did, but it's like you gave her a new engine. Everything's different. Everything's better." "I didn't change anything fundamental," Abigail said. "I just helped her remember who she was supposed to be." Those words resonated in ways that Riley wasn't ready to examine too closely. "So," Abigail continued, "do I get to keep my job?" Riley extended her hand. "Welcome to the team, Abigail Evans." When their hands touched, Riley felt a jolt of something she couldn't quite name. Electric, warm, unsettling in the best possible way. Over the next few weeks, Riley and Abigail fell into a rhythm. Mornings were for practice runs and adjustments. Afternoons for major maintenance and preparation for upcoming races. They worked well together, their different but complementary skills creating a synergy that improved both their performances. Abigail never tried to overstep her boundaries, never attempted to dictate racing strategy or critique Riley's driving. But she had an intuitive understanding of what Tempest needed to perform at her peak, and she could translate the car's mechanical language in ways that helped Riley become a better driver. "Your braking points are inconsistent in turn 3, Abigail observed one afternoon as they reviewed telemetry data. "Not because you're misjudging the corner, but because Tempest's weight distribution shifts when you hit the brakes that hard. Try a longer, gentler brake application starting about 50 feet earlier." Riley implemented the suggestion during her next practice session and immediately shaved 0.2 of a second off her lap time. It wasn't just Abigail's technical knowledge that impressed Riley. The woman had an innate understanding of pressure, of what it meant to perform when everything was on the line. She never added stress to an already tense situation, never made Riley feel like she had to prove herself. During one particularly frustrating practice session, when nothing seemed to be going right, Abigail simply handed Riley a cup of coffee and said, "Sometimes the track teaches us humility before it teaches us speed." The observation was so unexpectedly profound that Riley found herself laughing despite her frustration. "Where do you get these pearls of wisdom?" she asked. "Same place anyone gets wisdom," Abigail replied with a smile. "By making mistakes and paying attention to the lessons they teach." Riley was beginning to realize that Abigail Evans was unlike anyone she had ever met. The woman combined technical brilliance with emotional intelligence, professional competence, with personal warmth. She was, Riley had to admit, exactly the kind of person who could become dangerous to someone trying to maintain emotional distance. The problem was, Riley found herself not wanting to maintain that distance. ****. Their first race together was at Atlanta Motor Speedway, a high-speed oval that rewarded both raw power and tactical intelligence. Riley had won here twice before, but that was with her old crew, before the divorce, before everything fell apart. The morning of the race, Riley woke up in her motel room with familiar butterflies in her stomach. Pre-race nerves were nothing new, but something felt different this time. There was anticipation mixed with the anxiety, a sense that today might be important in ways she couldn't yet understand. She arrived at the track to find Abigail already there, going through her pre-race checklist with methodical precision. Tempest gleamed under the garage lights, every surface cleaned and polished to perfection. "How's she looking?" Riley asked. "Like she's ready to remind everyone why they should never underestimate her," Abigail replied without looking up from the engine bay. During the drivers' meeting and qualifying rounds, Riley found herself glancing toward the pit area where Abigail worked. There was something reassuring about the woman's presence, a sense of competent backup that Riley hadn't felt in months. The race itself was a masterclass in strategy and execution. Tempest ran flawlessly, responding to every demand with enthusiasm. When other cars began experiencing tire wear and handling problems in the later stages, Tempest seemed to get stronger, more determined. With 10 laps to go, Riley found herself in second place behind Mike Morrison, Big Jim's nephew and defending track champion. Mike was a skilled driver, but Riley could see that his car was beginning to struggle with the heat and strain of the long race. "You've got him," Abigail's voice crackled through the radio. "Tempest is running cooler than she has all day. Wait for your moment and trust your instincts." The moment came on lap 93. Coming out of turn 4, Mike's car drifted slightly wide, leaving an inside line open. Riley didn't hesitate. She dropped Tempest into the gap and pulled alongside, the two cars running wheel to wheel down the front straight. The crowd was on its feet as they approached turn 1. Riley had the inside line, but Mike had momentum. For a heart-stopping moment, it was unclear who would emerge ahead. Then Riley did something that surprised even herself. Instead of fighting the corner, she trusted Tempest completely, letting the car find her own line through the turn. The result was a pass so smooth and natural it looked choreographed. She held the lead through the final 7 laps, crossing the finish line with a 3-second margin of victory. In victory lane, as champagne sprayed and cameras flashed, Riley found herself looking for Abigail in the crowd. When their eyes met, the mechanic smiled and gave her a thumbs up that somehow meant more than all the congratulations and media attention combined. Later, as the crowd dispersed and the track grew quiet, Riley and Abigail found themselves alone in the garage, cleaning up and packing equipment. "That was an incredible race," Abigail said as she secured tools in their cases. "I couldn't have done it without you," Riley replied, and she meant it. "The way Tempest ran today, ... It was like she was a completely different car." "She's always been capable of that performance," Abigail said. "She just needed someone who believed in her again." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Riley felt that familiar electric tingle, the sense that they were discussing more than just automotive performance. "Abigail," she began, not sure what she wanted to say. But before she could continue, Big Jim appeared in the garage doorway, grinning like he'd just won the lottery himself. "Hell of a race, you two," he boomed. "Riley, that pass in turn 1 was pure poetry. And Abigail, whatever magic you've worked on that engine, keep doing it." The moment was broken, but something had shifted between them. As they finished packing up, Riley caught herself stealing glances at Abigail, noticing things she had tried not to notice before. The graceful curve of her neck, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, the quiet strength in her hands. Dangerous thoughts, complicated thoughts. Thoughts that felt like betrayal of everything she had promised herself after the divorce. The victories continued. Over the next month, Riley won 3 more races and placed in the top 5 in every event she entered. Her confidence was returning, and with it, a joy in racing that she had thought was lost forever. But it wasn't just her professional life that was improving. For the first time since her divorce, Riley found herself looking forward to each day, anticipating the hours she would spend working alongside Abigail in the garage. The attraction was undeniable now, at least on Riley's part. She found herself creating excuses to work late, to spend extra time discussing race strategy or reviewing performance data. She noticed everything about Abigail, the way she hummed while working, her habit of tucking a strand of hair behind her ear when thinking, the small scar on her left hand from some long ago accident. The problem was, she couldn't tell if Abigail felt the same way. The other woman was warm and friendly, but always professional. She never crossed boundaries, never gave signals that their relationship was anything more than a successful professional partnership. Riley began to wonder if she was reading too much into casual touches, shared smiles, moments of comfortable silence. Maybe Abigail was just naturally warm with everyone. Maybe Riley's attraction was one-sided, a product of her emotional vulnerability and loneliness. The uncertainty was driving her crazy. Things came to a head on a humid Thursday evening in September. They had been working late, preparing Tempest for a race at Road Atlanta, when a sudden thunderstorm rolled in. Rain hammered against the garage roof like metallic drums, and lightning illuminated the sky in stroboscopic flashes. "Looks like we're stuck here for a while," Abigail observed, glancing toward the open bay door where rain was forming puddles on the concrete. Riley tried to focus on the carburetor adjustments she was making, but her awareness of Abigail's proximity was making concentration difficult. The other woman was leaning against Tempest's fender, close enough that Riley could smell her shampoo, something clean and citrusy that made her think of summer mornings. Riley, Abigail said suddenly, her voice different somehow. Softer, more uncertain. Yeah, Riley looked up from her work. Can I ask you something personal? Riley's heart began to beat faster. Sure, your divorce. Was it because of the racing? Some partners have trouble with the risks, the time commitment. The question caught Riley off guard. She and Abigail had never discussed her marriage, though it wasn't exactly a secret in the small world of regional racing. No, Riley said after a moment. It was because Francis couldn't keep his pants zipped around anything in a skirt. Racing was actually the one thing that kept me sane during all of that. Abigail's expression grew thoughtful. I'm sorry. That must have been incredibly painful. It was. Riley set down her wrench, suddenly needing to move, to do something. With the nervous energy building inside her, it made me question everything I thought I knew about myself, about what I wanted from life. And what did you discover? The question was simple, but the way Abigail asked it, with genuine curiosity and concern, made it feel momentous. I discovered that I'm stronger than I thought I was, Riley said. And that maybe I haven't been as honest with myself about some things as I should have been. What kind of things? Riley turned to face Abigail directly, her heart pounding so hard she was sure it was audible over the rain. Things like attraction, desire, what I really want from a relationship. The air between them seemed to crackle with tension that had nothing to do with the lightning outside. Abigail's eyes had grown wide, and Riley could see her pulse beating rapidly at the base of her throat. Riley, Abigail said softly, I need to tell you something. But before she could continue, Riley's phone rang. The harsh electronic sound shattered the moment like a brick through a window. Riley glanced at the caller ID and cursed under her breath. It's Big Jim, she said apologetically. I should take this. The call was about logistics for the upcoming race, important but not urgent. By the time Riley finished the conversation, the rain had stopped and Abigail was packing up her tools. I should head home, Abigail said, not quite meeting Riley's eyes. Early day tomorrow. Riley wanted to stop her, to resume their conversation, to ask what she had been about to say. But something in Abigail's manner suggested that the moment had passed, that whatever vulnerability had existed between them had been closed off. Of course, Riley said. See you tomorrow. After Abigail left, Riley sat alone in the garage, surrounded by the familiar smells of oil and metal, trying to understand what had just happened and what it might mean for her carefully reconstructed life, asterisk, asterisk. The next few days passed in a haze of polite professionalism. Abigail was friendly but distant, focused on her work with an intensity that left no room for personal conversation. Riley found herself missing the easy camaraderie they had developed, the sense of partnership that went beyond mere professional collaboration. She tried to convince herself that it was better this way, simpler, less complicated. But her heart wasn't buying what her mind was selling. The breaking point came the following Tuesday night. Riley had stayed late to work on a transmission issue, and she thought she was alone in the garage. It was nearly midnight when she heard footsteps outside. She looked up to see Abigail silhouetted in the doorway, rain dripping from her jacket, her hair wild from the wind. What are you doing here so late? Abigail asked. Could ask you the same question, Riley replied, wiping her hands on a rag. I left my good multimeter here. I need it for a job tomorrow. Abigail stepped into the garage, shaking raindrops from her jacket. But you're here because you're avoiding something? The accusation caught Riley off guard. I'm not avoiding anything, I'm working. You're hiding, Abigail said, moving closer. The same way you've been hiding for the past week? Ever since our conversation got interrupted, Riley felt her defenses rising. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Abigail was close now. Close enough that Riley could see the frustration and something else, something that looked like hurt in her eyes. Because I think you're scared. I think you're terrified of what might happen if you stop running. Long enough to have an honest conversation. About what? Riley demanded, even though she knew exactly what. About this. Abigail gestured between them. About what's been building between us for weeks. About the way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. And the way I look at you when I think you're not paying attention. Riley's heart was hammering now, fight or flight instincts warring with something deeper. Something that wanted to stop running and face whatever was coming. You don't understand, she said. My marriage just ended. My life just fell apart. I can't I'm not ready for full quote. For what? Abigail stepped closer, close enough that Riley could feel the heat radiating from her body. For honesty? For connection? For the possibility that maybe you're not as broken as you think you are? Riley backed up until she hit the garage wall, concrete cool against her shoulders. Abigail followed, not aggressively, but with quiet determination. I'm not good at this, Riley whispered. Relationships, trust, I don't want to hurt you. Then don't, Abigail said simply. Don't hurt me by pushing me away because you're afraid. Don't hurt me by pretending that what's between us doesn't exist. They were so close now that Riley could count the flecks of gold in Abigail's honey-colored eyes. Could feel the other woman's breath warm against her face. Abigail, she said, but the rest of the sentence disappeared when Abigail placed her hands flat against the wall on either side of Riley's head, effectively trapping her. I'm going to kiss you now, Abigail sighed, her voice husky with emotion. If you don't want me to, say so. But if you do want me to, if you're brave enough to stop running and see what happens, then don't say anything at all. Riley opened her mouth to speak, to protest, to maintain the wall she had built around her heart, but no words came. Instead, she found herself leaning forward slightly, her lips parting in anticipation. Abigail smiled then, a soft expression that transformed her entire face. I was hoping you'd say that, she whispered, and then their lips met. The kiss was electric, tender and passionate simultaneously. All of Riley's carefully constructed defenses crumbled in an instant, replaced by a hunger she hadn't even realized. She'd been carrying. This wasn't like kissing Francis or any man she had been with before. This was something entirely new, entirely right. When they finally broke apart, both women were breathing hard. Oh, Riley said, her voice barely audible. Good oh or bad oh? Abigail asked, though her smile suggested she already knew the answer. Definitely good, oh, Riley replied. Scary good. Life-changing good. Abigail laughed, a sound like silver. Bells in the quiet garage. Good, because I've been wanting to do that for weeks, and it would have been really awkward if it turned out to be terrible. Riley felt herself smiling, really smiling, for the first time in months. It wasn't terrible. It was perfect. They stood there for a moment, foreheads touching, sharing breath and space, and the beginning of something that felt too important to name. So what happens now? Riley asked. Now, Abigail said, we figure it out together. One day at a time. One race at a time. One kiss at a time. And there, against the garage wall at midnight, with rain pattering on the roof and the smell of motor oil in the air, Riley Wilson finally stopped running from her heart. The weeks following their first kiss were the happiest of Riley's adult life. She and Abigail navigated their new relationship with the same careful attention they brought to fine-tuning race engines. They took things slowly, building trust and intimacy at a pace that honored both women's need for emotional safety. Riley discovered that being with Abigail felt like coming home to a place she had never known existed. The other woman understood her in ways that Francis never had, saw strength where he had seen stubbornness, recognized passion where he had seen obsession. Their professional partnership deepened alongside their personal one. Tempest continued to dominate races, and Riley found herself ranked third in the regional championship standings, with only 4 races remaining in the season. But success, as Riley's grandfather used to say, often attracts the wrong kind of attention. It started with small things, tools that went missing from the garage, only to turn up in strange places. Mysterious mechanical issues that couldn't be easily explained. A feeling of being watched during late-night practice sessions. Riley might have dismissed these incidents as paranoia or a coincidence, if not for the note she found tucked under Tempest's windshield wiper one gray October morning. Some bitches don't belong on the track, back off, or face the consequences. The words were printed in block capitals on cheap paper, anonymous and ugly. Riley's hands shook as she read them, not from fear, but from anger. She had faced harassment before. Racing was still largely a man's world, and not everyone appreciated female participation, but something about this felt more personal, more dangerous. What's that? Abigail asked, approaching from the garage with a coffee in each hand. Riley showed her the note, watching as Abigail's expression darkened. We should call the police, Abigail said immediately. And tell them what? Someone left me a nasty note? You know how seriously they'll take that? Abigail set down the coffee cups and took Riley's hands in hers. This isn't just about racing, is it? Someone's targeting you specifically. Riley had been trying not to think about that possibility, but she couldn't deny the logic. Maybe it's just some drunk idiot who doesn't like seeing women win races. Maybe, or maybe it's someone who knows you personally. Someone who has access to the garage, who knows your schedule. The thought sent a chill down Riley's spine. The racing community was small and generally tight-knit. The idea that someone she knew, possibly someone she trusted, might want to hurt her was deeply unsettling. We'll be more careful, Riley decided. Install some security cameras, change the garage locks, but I'm not backing down. I've worked too hard to get where I am. Abigail smiled, but Riley could see the worry in her eyes. I wouldn't expect anything less from you. But promise me we'll be smart about this. No more late nights alone in the garage. No more isolated practice sessions. Riley agreed, though she suspected that being smart might not be enough if someone was truly determined to cause trouble. The next race was at Talladega, a high-speed superspeedway that rewarded courage and punished mistakes with equal brutality. Riley had mixed feelings about the track. She had won there once and crashed spectacularly there twice. The morning of the race, as Abigail performed her usual pre-race inspection, she discovered something that made her blood run cold. Riley, she called, her voice tight with control. You need to see this. Riley hurried over to where Abigail was kneeling beside Tempest's left front wheel. The brake line had been cut, not completely severed, but damaged enough that it would likely fail under the stress of hard racing. If you had driven this car at racing speeds, ... Abigail didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Brake failure at Talladega speeds could easily be fatal. Riley stared at the sabotage brake line, feeling sick. This wasn't a prank or intimidation tactic. This was attempted murder. We're calling the police, she said, and we're scratching from today's race. Agreed, Abigail said. But Riley, whoever did this is escalating. They're not trying to scare you anymore. They're trying to kill you. The police investigation yielded few immediate results. The brake line had been cut with a sharp knife, probably sometime during the night. There were no fingerprints, no witnesses, no obvious suspects. Detective Sarah Martinez, the investigating officer, was sympathetic but realistic about the challenges they faced. Without more evidence, there's not much we can do except increase patrols around the garage, she explained. But I'd strongly advise you to consider hiring private security, at least until we figure out who's behind this. That evening, as Riley and Abigail sat in Riley's apartment reviewing security options, Riley's phone rang. Unknown number. Don't answer it, Abigail warned, but Riley was tired of feeling helpless. She answered on the third ring.